All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Myokinetix Podcast. Today we have a very special guest. I am in awe that he's here. You might know him for his helmet catch and his Super Bowl performance 2007, but all in all, he's just a Jersey legend, and it's so nice to have him here. David Tyree, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Appreciate it. How we doing? No, is it Natty? Because all I see, Natty. I'm just making sure we got to get it right.
Yeah. So, hey, welcome to the show. And I know, obviously, you had a huge moment, and where you are in life now is I like to always see people post career, and I think that's because it's such a transition period,
it
right?
Is.
And I always talk to my pro guys when we get an opportunity to talk to them. I always tell them like, hey, listen, at some point this is going to end for you.
Sure.
Like, what is next for you? It's always good to have that that moment in mind. So before we get into what you're doing now, let's just backtrack. I know some people know you from that incredible Super Bowl catch, that performance.
Yep.
And I know you went to Syracuse.
No doubt.
You had, great career there, and then got drafted 6th round.
Yep.
And then from there, just stay with the Giants since you drafted till 2008, right?
Yeah, 2009. I think I got released after training camp. Obviously, the team was still great. Had an injury right after the Super Bowl. And they cut me in training camp. And, basically, maybe week 4 got picked up by the Ravens, and that was my 7th and last season.
Okay.
Yeah, just doing special teams.
Yeah. So let's go back. So let's talk about your journey, obviously growing up in Livingston, and then –
Well, East Orange, you know how it is. St. Barnabas is like that's the hospital. So if you're in Essex County, I don't know, and I'm born 1980, so big dating. But, yeah, that was definitely the hospital where most people in Essex County were born in. So – It's well stated. Big shout to St. Barnabas, but East Orange, and then I was, around 10 years old, moved to Montclair.
Okay, so let's talk about what is it like transitioning from just being a local high school athlete to playing big time in the Dome. The Dome is different.
Yeah, the Dome was and the Dome is still special, but it was just a special time where Syracuse was one of the best teams in the country around 98 Donovan McNabb era. They had All-Americans, and it was kind of like when the University of Miami was coming up from under probation in those years. So, my freshman year there, we're opening the season with Tennessee, Michigan, McNabb's on us. So it was a special time to go there. And I think I got redshirted, but we won the Big East, and it just made you hungry. That was actually my dream, was to play Division 1A football. Mm-hmm. So and I was kind of like living in my dream, never fully feeling like I arrived at the collegiate level, but hungry as ever, and it was a special place. You literally couldn't hear the person next to you when that dome was lit. You couldn't hear anybody standing next to you. It was special.
How did you then manage the pressure that associates with playing in that kind of environment?
Yeah, I would say this, just as a kid coming from Essex County, especially around those times, I think I was a smart enough kid to recognize what the opportunities were. Mm-hmm. Football was kind of like that, if you want to call it, the guiding light. That's the surrogate father that gave me the guidance structure and the values to have the discipline. But I was also reckless. So most of the reckless behavior is the alcohol. Marijuana I monitored because I was always afraid to get hit on a drug test and lose the game. The game gave me something to fear losing. Mm-hmm. And I guess you could say the pressure was never a big thing for me. Like, I lived for the lights. Mm-hmm. I was never the most talented. I was the most hungry. And honestly, even when I moved into Montclair, there were just amazing talent in Montclair, New Jersey. It was special town to move into, had history, and I was just trying to find my lane there. I never felt like I was the chief dog. So same thing at Syracuse. When I got there, I was just a dude, and I had to grind my way up. And that's basically how even the whole special teams thing. I didn't go to Syracuse to become a special teams player, but I had to figure out how I was going to make an impact on the game.
Mm-hmm. I think the key thing you just said there, just fear of losing football. And we see that as obviously as a healthcare provider, a physical therapy clinic. We see people that lose the ability to play their sport. And I think once it's been taken away from you, it's different because you take those things for granted. You
do. Like I said, the game provides so much meaning for young people, right? I think that's all sports in general. I think at the end of the day, maybe men a little bit more. Now that I've raised some young men, it's like you need a reason, right? You need a purpose. You need a cause. And I think that sports as a young person it gives you something to, I think men are more motivated by competing, not just learning, right? Like you learn with a purpose, right? And I think that the simplicity of winning a game is what really kind of anchors that, and of course for women as well. And of course, it could be, the danger part is where our identities get attached to. But that's the challenge for the emerging athlete. My generation had tons of multi-sport athletes, so you were diverse and understanding. Like it helped you to not just be a better athlete, but also have different perspective and approaches to the game and life. So yeah, it was just a good time. Like, it was also a social thing, like, whereas there's a lot more pressure on the modern day athlete to perform and be great at one thing, 10,000 hours and all this other stuff. I think you got good because you either were good, gifted, and talented, and you had a unique drive. The same unique drive is still what it takes every single athlete today, but everybody's trying to do it. And I think it's great. But obviously sports are evolving, people are evolving, and I think the whole health of the human is considered today, which is needed in the culture that we're creating.
Yeah, and it's so great. I always, the way I look at multiple athletes, I'm sorry, multiple sport athletes is that learning curve, right?
Yeah.
If you're good at one sport, the next sport you might not be as good, and it's humble you immediately. You can have the best season in football, but then when you go to basketball and you're not that good, you're like, okay, I got to work at that.
Yep.
So I think it's always putting kids in a good learning curve where just when you think you're good, there's something else that is going to tell you you're not good, and you have to either overcome it or you get pressure and crushed by it. And
Sure.
I think that's a really good parallel in life.
It is.
And I always I find myself, and my wife has to remind me sometimes, like, hey, listen, you're getting a little too cocky there, right? And I think,
good old wise, baby.
And that's the best part. And you're right. When kids have a singular purpose,
Sure.
as far, hey, I and plus when it's a team element,
Yes.
it's your contribution that actually lead to a greater purpose. You have a higher impact. So if you were just an individual, that's just working for just yourself,
Yep.
and you do all the work, you reap all the benefits, it's great. But if you do all the work and then you help 10 other people
There you go.
to win, to do things like that, feel even better.
Way better. And like I said, I in high school, it was football, basketball, and eventually shifted to track. So even on the individual level, it's kind of like track is one of those individual sports, but also team, but it's far more individual. It's like I said, I think most can agree that, especially in America, no sport quite like football from a standpoint of the physicality as well as the strategy and the number of people involved to make one play successful. Not just it's like one play, 11 people have to execute at a high level for that one play to be successful among 70 plus. So it's just a unique game in relation to kind of, when you look at teams, organizations, football uniquely positions us to want to have the resolve that it takes to endure the human experience. There's a lot of metaphors and parallels, and it's hard not to love it when you, especially as a young man who want to be physical, and so it wets the palate, unlike few. But I was just fortunate to have those other experiences to get those other different dynamics. Like, man, track makes me individually responsible for my own losses. I can't blame it on anyone else.
Yeah.
That guy beat me, right? So there's little unique things to take away from everything.
Yeah. So let's talk about this, because we have guys in college right now,
Yep.
and they went to college to play a certain position, but then they end up getting on special team.
Yep.
So how do you transition that mindset, right? Because someone like you could be like, oh, no, I don't want to play this position.
Sure.
And this is beneath me or
Yep.
something like that. So how do you transition that mindset to become one of the best special team? You went to Pro Bowl
Yep.
as a special
I
team.
did.
So how do you cultivate that and be like, no, this is this. I'm going to own this now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it leads back to, humility is the chief virtue of all in the human experience, and I think it's talked about, but I think it's very rare to tap into it authentically. For me, number one, like I said, I didn't go to Syracuse to become a special teams player, but at the end of the day, whether number one, I never had a lack of confidence in my ability. But I was also, I always say this, and it's a talk that I give, self-awareness was my superpower. Like, this guy right now, he's better than me. Quentin Spotwood, he's an All-American. He's better than me. And if I can't say that first before I move forward and start building the blocks and the groundwork to become great, then I'm gonna lose. If I sit up and say, "Oh, they hating on me, man," they ain't letting me play. Well, you have to first look within. So, and then the transition to special teams is about, you think just because they're not calling my card or they don't like me, and I wasn't sexy. I was an old Buick, and there was Lamborghinis in a lot. So for me, I wasn't the most likable prospect, in the locker room in relation to skill sets. So at the end of the day, I can't change that. What I could do is own what I have. So I basically hedged my own things internally. If I drop one pass, I treat it like dropping three. And I said, well, if I drop a pass, I'm giving them a reason to disqualify me. And special teams was my way to make impact while I was creating my own opportunity, not waiting, because making an impact creates opportunity. So when I get on the field and I nail somebody and they're like, yo, this dude is a dog, how else can we get him on the field? And I think I was thinking about some of those things. And of course, I love the game. So, I was a two-sport player in high school. So, yeah, going down on a kickoff was attractive to me, to go hit somebody and take out these frustrations as well. So it served me on a few different ends, but at the end of the day, it was some selflessness, and I would rather contribute than just sit on the side and wait. And I think it was those kinds of mentalities that, again, created more opportunities to move forward.
Yeah, so just based on what you were saying, there's this one saying I read every single morning, right? It goes, don't wait to strike when the iron's hot. Make it hot by striking it.
There you go.
So that's just like, because most people are just like, all right, I got to wait for my time.
Yeah.
And with you, you're like, no, I what can I do right now?
Sure.
What can I do right now to contribute to the team?
Yep.
We had one guy that we did a podcast with. He's one of the Jets guy, and he's a big team guy. Shout out to Chris Traveler. He'd always say like, hey, man, I just need to get on the field.
There it is.
I just want to contribute. So, he's a backup QB, but he's like, I'm going on special team this week.
Yep.
He's like, I'm just ready to just do whatever it takes to help the team win.
There you go.
And I think that goes, again, it makes you more than just yourself.
There you go. Yeah, it's always going to be that in relation. Like, there is no one bigger than the organization. There's no one bigger than the team. And that goes to the best player on the team. And I think, more skilled players, like you're always going to need superstars to have a great team. But at the end of the day, what makes a great roster, what makes a great team is the middle of the pack. When you look at a draft, it's those, do you hit on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round pick? And because at the end of the day, you're shooting for the stars on the 1st round and the 2nd round. And so yeah, it's really every person matters, right? And I think that when a guy can own the lowest responsibility with the same measure, verve, zeal, and passion just to contribute, that means that's where his love is. And I think my love for the game, caused me to just humble myself in some ways where it's like, well, I'm gonna create noise. And that's what I did. Like, I'm gonna find a way to enter the stat sheet. Life is not a spectator sport, and obviously I can't be of impact on the sideline. So I'm gonna go block punts, I'm gonna go nail this dude inside the 20, and I'm gonna get attention in a way where hopefully it inspires others and creates more opportunities.
Yeah, it's just all about building momentum.
Sure.
And just looking at your story, your career, your life, and when I read about it, I just look at like, okay, great. He had good momentum, and then the momentum stopped, and then you have to kind of pull yourself back up, build that momentum up again.
Yeah.
So can we talk about the episode where you kind of had to take some time off, taking care of your health, your mental health, before you get back on the field? What was that like? Because clearly, it's back then it was not as talked about as it is now.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, like I have a massive transition after my rookie year, and I got arrested on marijuana possession. And basically, I didn't know what was going to happen. And that was kind of my transition into faith. But at the same time, I'm speaking plainly, you got to adversary. There's if there's a real God, there's an enemy of my soul. And basically, in very short story, I had a lot of zeal for God. I didn't know anything about God. I wasn't raised in the church. Next thing you know, I've realized that God can speak to people, and I wanted him to speak to me. But at the end of the day, I actually entered into a little bit of a psychotic state and episode. So for almost a month, I was spiraling into a mentally unstable place, and I actually spent about 3 or 4 days in East Orange General back in 2004. So my first month as a Christian was riddled with spiritual warfare, and I finally got, I think it was like my 3rd day in the hospital after having some wild episodes in the hospital, and I just said, God, I don't know what this is, but whatever this is, I give it to you. And I did a lot of crazy and weird things in between. So I'm very transparent and real about the state of Satan trying to destroy people's lives, how that's connected to mental health to some degree. Because, even when you hear people in states of psychosis, there's usually a few things like they think it's God or it's a religious experience. Well, I did have a real experience. I'll just say that. But after that prayer, I remember the voices in my head that just began to dissipate. And then I had like an MRI on my brain the next day, everything checked out, had like a super small cyst. And that was kind of like the beginning of my Christian. So yeah, there was a guy, Charles Way, who was the director of player development at the time. I mean, these guys didn't know what was going on with me for a while. And so my life went from, functioning alcoholic, womanizer, just out here living that rookie year NFL life to, man, I'm a new creation in Christ and I'm zealous for God, but now I was unstable. So when I got out the hospital, I was well, and, like everybody doesn't have that kind of story in relation to mental recovery, but it was kind of like I said, it was the disruption of an old life to a new life, and it was hedged by a lot of, torment and warfare. So, I've had tons of interesting transitions that, thank God, I could say that started with God. That was like my road to Damascus. But even beside that, like injury, getting injured after the Super Bowl, going from the highest of highs, watching God give me a victory, to a month later, right after the greatest victory of my life, I have a knee injury, haphazardly, literally sitting down, going to grab some lotion after getting a workout, and my knee locks up. And basically it was kind of like that. It was entering into like a wilderness season, like, learning to trust God in the midst of disappointment, valleys. And I think that was what the goal was. I wasn't going to dishonor God or have any less faith that the same God who brought me to the place where it gave me the greatest catch in Super Bowl history. So yeah, I mean, I've had some unique transitions that have been profound. They've served me well in maturing, but ultimately the mental well-being is having a sense of purpose, a sense of identity, and being anchored in something that's real. I would say Christ has been the most real thing, but also a community, right? Like, so starting with your family and a people that will secure you. And I think those are some of the most stabilizing forces. Me and my wife have a dynamic marriage of over 18 years, but we have a value system, namely our faith, Christ himself, that is above us. So that's what makes it so strong, because, if you have a little skirmish here, then we just kind of look up, and there's something that can quell the fire.
Yeah, I love the point of, like, we all need a point of anchor, right? And something just it's kind of like a base camp. That's what I like to look at it.
I like it.
It's like, hey, all right, if I feel a little rattled, like, can I go back to base camp? Can I go back to baseline? And what we appreciate in PT as well is like, hey, you come in, you just have a season, like, let's get your body back to baseline. Yeah. And you can do that physically, you can do that spiritually. Sure. And it's important to get back there, right? Because how can you build on top of a shaky foundation? Yeah. I think having a strong foundation is crucial. Sure. And the fact that, I was talking to my wife about this last night, is like having a sense of community, of great people around you. All it is give you support system, right? When you're going through the valleys, having faith despite all the suffering, and knowing that you're not doing it alone.
There you go. Yeah, you said it, despite all the suffering and in light of all the suffering, right? Like, so I always remind believers and non-believers alike that suffering is to some degree a part of the human experience. And I think that we find the best, you cultivate the best out of humans in difficult times. And I think that's, that's a theme in our country where we love good times. And so everyone's heard the, good times create weak men create. And I think that cycle, you have to always continue to observe that cycle and rage against the machine, understanding what it takes to be a strong man and those strong men creating good times. And I think that's where, like I said, our faith is the firm foundation to that. That's the anchor, Christ. But ultimately, just living through the human experience, not despising difficulties, not despising, not looking for sufferings, right? But not despising them at the same time.
But, going back to looking for suffering, sometimes we do create our own suffering by
there you go.
taking short-sighted action.
Well said. Well said. And you know, I'll give you this, you know, raw example, meaning like, I feel like at this stage, I'm 43 years old, and now being in an entrepreneurial space, you know, I just went through toughest 3 years of my life transitioning out of the front office, and it was one misstep, right? And it was an easy thing to misstep. I have a loan on our business, SBA loan, traditional means of doing business, and because we were looking at selling our house at one point, and I was like, okay, we'll put that, you know, then we said, no, we're not going to sell the house. We're going to stay. We lived in Booton. And basically, I'm like, okay, we'll use the house as collateral. And then COVID hits and the market shifts. Now we're talking about over a year beyond this whole build out and construction of Clean Juice Morristown. And this is just one misstep, one respectably easy to overlook. And basically, we put the house back on the market. Now the COVID market's heating up, sells in a week, and we get to closing day. And guess what is overlooked and missed in the whole process? Partially my fault, but also, hey, man, there's a title search. Something should have came up there, and we can't close on the house. So it kind of brings me back to your point when we talk about short-sighted decisions, right? Taking every decision, knowing, being aware, because I'm an ownership mindset guy. At the end of the day, even when I look at that scenario, I'm looking at the lawyer like, hey, like, you know, I did have a loan. You didn't ask me anything about that. This comes up on a title search. We get all the way to closing day, and it's like, you know, kingdom come. So now I just had the ability to say, you know what, man, you missed that, David. You missed that, even though it was over a year ago. Most people might miss it too, but man, I still had to take ownership of that missed, short-sighted decision. Before you said, we're going to put this house on the market, did you think about what you did over a year ago and what that could cost your family? So decisions are always going to be in the way, you know, or part of our growth process that may lead to. So I'm always trying to avoid unnecessary suffering too.
Yeah, no, that's a huge part. And like the whole concept of like me starting something like Myokinetix is a place for, you know, built by athletes for athletes. And part of that is, like, one of my favorite stories is always going back to Pinocchio, because it's so fundamental, right? You have Jiminy Cricket, who's a conscious voice, and then you have this innocent thing, which is Pinocchio, just like trying to figure it out. And that's how I see our patient, because by the time they come to us, identity has been ripping out. They have no idea who they are. They're kind of in this dark space, trying to figure themselves out. And what we're trying to do is like, all right, how do we navigate, you know, our athletes, our patient, by giving them the voice of reason so they don't have misstep.
There you go.
If they were to have misstep, you know, let's kind of hedge against of how many missteps they're going to have.
There you go.
Because you know us as human beings, we are flawed things.
Sure.
And we will take misstep. And
That's
all
it.
we're trying to do is like, can we create a support system? If the misstep did happen, here's how we go against it.
There you go.
Right? It's always, the way we look at it is like, how do we, you know, get our patient from point A to point B.
Sure.
And give them as much guidance as possible. And I think it's a huge thing that when you need something like that, especially in sport, in business, oh my God, in business especially. Like, I'm flying out to Miami just to learn more.
Sure.
Because I love saying this. I say, like, I'm smart enough to know when I'm stupid.
There you go.
And then admitting that when you don't,
you got to know what you don't know, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's the same thing. Meaning, like, I feel like I'm intelligent enough to do most things, but the biggest thing is I'm able to say, probably one of my biggest things, I'm able to say I don't know that. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to do that. And it doesn't mean I'm afraid to do it. It just means that I don't know how to do it. So I need somebody to hedge that so we can get in the game. Exactly. And whether that's information, whether that's a relationship, whether that's a partnership. So, you know, and I think some of that's personality type, because some people are just, let's just call it, they're just gifted to figure things out in a conclusive way. I got quite a few Hispanic friends, and they always find ways to just fix things. Right? And, you know, I think some people and people groups are innately skilled to do things, but I'm always trying to reduce the margin for error. I have 7 kids. So when I tell people, my life is always about considering the people that I'm carrying along with me. So, you know, I don't move in a lot of haste. I want to get involved, but, you know, I got to do due diligence because I'm carrying a little bit of an ocean liner. I'm not just, and it's kind of that way in my life. It's like, well, I used to be the guy that just quick to get in the game, because it was just me. And I felt like I could shoulder some of the pain points, but maybe my wife or maybe my kids, they can't shoulder some of those pain points. I think when you get in business, you start thinking about the whole. When you're working with athletes, you start thinking about how each decision affects the entire team or the entire body. And that's the beautiful thing about leadership is that, as long as you care and you consider, then you could be a dynamic leader. Those are the two requirements for high level leadership. You have to care about what you're doing, right? And this is individual leading your own life. And then you have to just consider, who am I? What am I? Where are my goals? Where am I? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And I think it's those kinds of simplistic things that you can move to action immediately.
Yeah. And just to go back on that, is like, if you can lead yourself, then you can lead others.
There it is.
If you can't lead yourself, no one's going to follow you, right? I always, I got to take care of me. I got to do me a little bit better before I can tell other people what to do. Then they can't follow me. Then it's just the blind leading the blind.
There you go.
So another thing I want to ask, right? Obviously, you had huge, game in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, your first touchdown was in.
The most forgotten touchdown in Super Bowl history. No doubt.
Yeah. It was your first touchdown of the season.
It was.
Yep.
Yeah, it was quite a drought that year.
Yeah. But you show up, and that's the whole point. Now, let's talk about you went from the best cash, you got hurt.
Yeah.
You got released, you got signed.
Yeah.
But at that point, did you know that, hey, this might be a last, I have my time is dwindling down in the league. And if you had that realization, when and how do you start thinking about what's next for you?
Great question. So when I got the injury, it's kind of like, you're always positive, right? Everybody's optimistic about what's going to happen next. And I think that, and it was kind of like disappointment to disappointment. So be ready by training camp. Then when training camp hits here, I'm on PUP, which means I got to wait 6 to 8 weeks to get that review because, wasn't fully ready. Probably was ready 2 or 3 weeks in, but here we go. Now I got to wait till week 6. Now I'm feeling good. First couple of days, okay, but then I strained my hamstring. So then that puts me on IR for the year. Come back, same thing. I start having soft tissue injuries. And at the time, quite honestly, training room wasn't as great as they are now. They were always a great training room. Ronnie Barnes is the best, historically in relation to trainers, probably in the Trainers Hall of Fame, So, but I think that when I got to Baltimore, first day I get there, strained my hamstring again. So it was just disappointment after disappointment. I really got into a grudge match with God at the hotel. But I think we had a game that weekend and then we had a bye. And so basically, had some time to get this hamstring strong. I wasn't going to be cut. They had me for the year, the Ravens. And it was kind of like dying. It was kind of like even though I was kind of like dying twice. I mean, that year on IR, I was home with the family. I was disconnected from the team. That was the year Plaxico shot himself, and the team should have won another Super Bowl. So it was almost like I got a bit of the transition while I was still playing because I was so disconnected from the locker room. I actually had left, the church kind of gave me I had left that church that I was a part of. So I realized I was kind of like, man, where my relationships at, right? So I kind of had a transition inside of a transition. And so by the time I kind of recover that last season in Baltimore and I figure things out, I start finding my rhythm. I get back after the season, we go to the playoffs. I wanted to play, but I was looking at I saw my life completely different. I was expecting my 5th child, and it was the first time I ever left my family. And so my priorities had shifted. I was already had a healthy identity as a son of God. I had a beautiful family, a healthy marriage, expecting my 5th child. So I was looking at things differently, and I think I had peace either way. So when no opportunities, I had some, Eagles, had a couple of teams that said they wanted to bring me in. And by the time June comes around, I'm like, I don't think I could just be running around to different facilities, training, trying to stay in shape, doing. I felt like there was more meaning and purpose in life that I needed to begin to pursue. So it was a lot more peace when that decision came around.
So did you know what were you going to embark on next?
I didn't know. That's what made it difficult. If was that was the joy of being in that role in player development, because you have to transition from the game while you're in the game. Mm-hmm. Meaning, like, you have to not be fearful of investing some of your time and energy into discovering who you are and what you're like while you're still the best at what you do. Mm-hmm. The athlete, especially the professional athlete, and even the collegiate athlete to some extent, has earned the right to say, I'm the best in the world at what I do. Mm-hmm. And whether you're on practice squad, you're still the best in the world at what you do. And there's different, ways to validate that. But when you look at the minority of, how many people are actually getting this opportunity, mm-hmm. you have to first say that I'm the best in the world at what I do. I still have goals. I still want to make the roster. I still want to be a starter. I still want to go to, I still want to be a Pro Bowl. I want to get 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. But you can invest more time to figure out what do I really enjoy? Mm-hmm. And so that was the joy of, after about 2 years of kind of meandering with my financial advisor, discovering that there was nothing within that ecosystem that made sense for me. I basically took a career transition program, which is now, I believe, called the Bridge to Success in the NFL. So they have tons of resources within the union, NFL, et cetera, for the players to begin to, take that inventory and discover and create different opportunities and explore interests. And that was the beginning of it for me. When I was, I had a great relationship. Troy Vincent, still a mentor of mine to this day, top 3 executive at the NFL. He was running player engagement at the time. And I ended up, just kind of taking, I would call it a bit of a risk because it was a part-time job. Mm-hmm. And I'm at the time, I think I got 6 kids, and I take a part-time job at the NFL, and I'm not making much money at all. And I just went for it. And it ended up paying well as far as finding a role that I was innately good at, but still had room to grow. Mm-hmm. And so I can't give him enough, honor and credit just for opening a door that made a whole lot of sense for me and getting back into the ecosystem of sports, life, and leadership to add value in the transition space.
Mm-hmm. And when you get into that role, and for me personally, right? So if I see some athletes that come in that kind of remind me of my younger self, like some stuff come up.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm just like, oof, I didn't feel that in a long time.
Yeah.
And then as good as it is for it to come up, you kind of have to address it too. So
sure.
With you, it's a constant exposure because we just went over your history where, you were drinking, you were doing a lot. So there was probably part of your life where things were just kind of pushed down.
Yeah.
And as you start facing and helping guys overcome certain problem, you probably see some parallel within your life. How do you, overcome that?
Yeah, I think, in the space where you're able to serve players, you have to ask. I had to learn how to ask the question, right? Because most people don't honor insight that they're not looking for, right? And it doesn't mean that it's not helpful in any way. It just means that it probably won't likely be received. So I began to learn in my last few years, especially in the front office, hey man, what's important to you? Mm-hmm. Where do you see yourself in a year? How do you want this career to work out? And and then from there, as they answer those questions, I can begin to lead them in a discussion and insight. Because there's very few things that I can't identify with. I tell people all the time, I made all the worst decisions and I made some of the best decisions. Mm-hmm. So meaning I was the woman, like the typical athlete vices of women, alcohol, marijuana, right? I mean, amongst our community, those are the typical vices. And you get a few shades of other things. Of course, there's other things that have entered the arena, synthetics, and just poor decision-making. Mm-hmm. And young men are prone to poor decision-making. Mm-hmm. So, number one, I'm not surprised, right? So I can, hey, man, I know exactly what you're going with. So it's just normalizing some of our weaknesses as well as our, poor decisions, and at the end of the day, but also taking accountability for it. Mm-hmm. Don't call it a mistake. Call it a bad decision. Mm-hmm. Right, like we make we make mistakes, but this was intentional, right? Some mistakes aren't as intentional.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'm big on language. Because when you abdicate, you try to delegate, and you don't. It means you're removing or minimalizing that decision that you made. Right? It's kind of like, poor company, bad company corrupts good habits. Mm-hmm. Well, remove yourself from that company. You chose that company.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if we say it that way, then it's just all about the bad company.
Yeah.
I was the bad friend. Like when I got arrested with marijuana possession, I paid for the marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't my bad company. I was kind of leading the charge.
Yeah.
And I think you have to get to some of these more sober moments as we're serving our community and figure out these places where we can identify with them and lay that bridge in love. Lay that bridge in love, man. Like, hey, man, I understand, but there's a better way. And I think that was the joy of being in those spaces and still serving the athlete community.
Yeah, and I think most people, like myself included.
Oh, snap!
Why I literally
was
just
wild.
had a feeling.
Really?
That was. I was like, I have a feeling the camera's gonna fall for
Sheesh.
some reason.
We all good?
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell me that?
Well, no, dude, it was a hunch. It was like when it was.
It was a hunch.
I was like,
Intuitive.
Yeah, I was like, oh shoot, I'm getting pretty good at this. Well, I mean, I'm not gonna say. I literally, as you were talking, I was like, I feel like the camera's gonna fall.
Hey.
But we'll get back to that.
You gotta edit some of that in. The blooper reel.
You just see Cody just kind of go.
Yeah, just see it falling.
Going up. You're good there, Nick?
Yeah, take a minute to figure that out.
While we're waiting, what kind of juice we got here?
Yeah, that's a red, which is actually they just improved that. So we used to press.
Dude, you're leaving me out, bro.
Huh?
Yeah.
You're leaving me out.
Listen, you can actually have that one. I'll be honest, right? So we used to press our juices, our cold press in the house.
Yeah.
And some of them are better. Some of them lost a little edge. That one was improved. The red is improved. They put pineapple in it.
Which one's that one?
This one is a milk. So we have cashew milks.
Oh, nice.
So this one has a little cold brew in it. Cashew milk latte.
Hey, Nick, it might come back down again because it's leaning that way. So.
Yeah. But yeah, I'll connect up with you, man. I'll bring you some juice, bro. Just bring you a pack of juice.
I'm definitely gonna try this.
Yeah,
while we're recording.
Yeah. So but we don't press, like the business. It took me about 8 months to really evaluate the value proposition. Fortunately, the business was successful enough to at least take care of itself through COVID. Same thing last year. Q3, Q4, 2022, we started getting sandblasted.
Yeah.
So now I'm really in like high level evaluation mode. How long, basically I'm trying to get this to, we're in spring month. We're in the spring months. Revenue should tick. Street traffic in Morristown.
Natty, do me a favor.
Yeah.
Can you hold this real quick?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get my backpack to counterweight it.
Yeah. I mean, you're in the best town. Like that's literally like no town's more active than Morristown.
I know, and it hasn't. We haven't seen the fruit of it, and I think our marketing is. I don't think so far. Guerrilla marketing is still the best for a juice. Because this is the challenge with a healthy product, or a perceived healthy product, right? Like, it's a premium product, so you have to educate the consumer.
Of course. Yeah.
So it's kind of like there's two businesses. It's like one is providing the product at a high level because they're paying money for it. Then it's like educating, right? Because most people, this is what you want to sell because it's just so easy to grab and go.
Yeah.
Whereas the fresh juice, we only have one juicer. So most people, if they want juice, they want a fresh juice.
Yeah.
And it's understandable, but of course that's the labor side. And then juice alone is never a sustainable business. That's why you start bringing in the wraps, the acai bowls, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like and basically the evolution of it, like these cold pressed juices are the best. We were doing them raw up until I think October of last year, September, October. Then they went HPP, which is still really good juice. But so some of them like two of the juices at least, they don't. The quality is good, but it's probably a little drop off in taste. The milks were a drop off. They're still good. The other milks were better. They taste like Cinnamon Toast Crunch. It was fantastic. They're still good, but they're like I said, if you're a nitpicker, and then you're gonna lose something with the loyal base.
Yeah, and I'm looking at. So I love studying business, right?
Sure.
And like with with the juicing business, it was huge at one point.
Oh.
And then you have like company like Athletic Greens, right, coming out. They're like, oh no, like why, like, and their whole thing was like, oh why get something that can expire when this doesn't expire as much?
Exactly.
Because then it costs so much cheaper.
There you go, and that's the challenge. So it's like so it took me like, well, I didn't have any choice. You know, timeline was like COVID, March. Giants told me, you know, my contract was up. They're not renewing it in like May, and in June we had no choice. Thank God we could open. We were looking for a March opening, but COVID hit.
Yeah.
So then we end up in June, and now we, you know, and it was smoking out the gate. We did great coming out the gate. So thank God the community was great. Small business community rallying.
Oh.
Rallying around COVID.
That's your second grade.
I
Yeah.
got you, bro.
Thank you.
I got you. I get it. Rallying around COVID. So all that stuff was really helpful. And last year was similarly solid. Like, you know, it was just taking care of itself, buying us time.
Yeah.
Because we have, like I said, my wife, we got 7 kids. When I was working full time, it made more sense. I was like, again, I'm like, my kids, they can work the store, blah, blah, blah. Get them some business experience. It was just very simple thinking. Like,
well, you know, it's again, isn't it always though? Like when you embark on something, because you're trying to show yourself this is a good idea.
Yeah.
It's so simple, and you don't know what you don't know.
Don't know what you don't know. And like I said, I would like to believe that apart from a pandemic, it probably was a better opportunity, because supply chain just goes warp, right? It goes ape nuts, and so now we're dealing with the most visceral supply chain era, and you know then I think this is the first year where we're settled into the recession mindset. So now, to me, our struggle is people aren't like, everybody wanted to be healthy at one point. So COVID, it was like a health thing, and then like everybody theoretically wants to be healthy, but we're also in a recession mindset. So when I'm looking at it from like, okay. So I had to pivot just to, you know, take care of the family, and that was in the, you know, the media.
All right.
So yeah, go for it.
All right. Okay. I'm gonna clap and we'll go. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry
Yeah.
about that, guys.
No problem. Like, why wouldn't it happen now, right?
I know, it's all good.
we do podcasts every day. Why wouldn't it happen now? All right. So just talking about the transition, right?
Sure.
As you're switching out of that, working for the Giants.
Yep.
And then getting on your own journey. So obviously now, as you guys can see, he has his own juice business, right? Clean juice.
Yeah,
Morristown.
franchise, single unit franchise. So
Yep.
we didn't build it from the ground up, but I like to invest in things that are.
It's a long term,
Yep.
right? It's a long term thing. So how do you come about this, right? And what gave you the idea of like, hey, listen, this is something I'm really into. It is something that you develop as you would start working with players.
Yeah, I mean, a healthy lifestyle. I think, you know, you get a good foundation as an athlete, right? You have to make the pivots with your body as you mature. And I think for me, juicing I found to be effective because I began to live a lifestyle of fasting, but I was always active. So I wanted nutrition, right? And I think, you know, the good thing about fasting is it's kind of gone mainstream. A lot of it was in relation to my faith. So it was like, yeah, I want to live a consecrated life. I want to live a healthy life. There's so many benefits to it, but I'm also want to be active too. So I need the nutrition. And so people like, you know, cleanses and things of that nature. I get it. There's 2 narratives around cleansing. Is like, some people cleanse to lose weight, not the right idea, right? Right. So, but juicing is just about how you get nutrition into your body. I think as a culture, we're nutrition deficient and nutrient deficient, and I think health starts with your nutrition. How you take care of the machine. What kind of gas are you putting in? And organic. And for me, as a business owner as well as a lifestyle component, I want to have the best. I want to provide the best for my children. That's why clean juice was an opportunity. It looked like the Starbucks of the juice business. Most juice businesses are kind of like tropical and chalkboard and messy, and clean juice aesthetically as well as value-wise, there was an alignment there. When I kind of found it, I actually was in Charlotte. So when I looked at something that I can whet my palate in the marketplace, this was something that was good for us. I always had that Cheers kind of thing. I want something that's my own, someplace I can go. And it was healthy, acai bowls, wraps, avocado toast, bunch of toast. The offerings were consistent and holistic. And it was organic. It was the best. So, I like pizza. I'm from Jersey, right? So, but at the end of the day, I couldn't get into something like that because my conscience, I lead with my conscience.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I still go have a slice and do the things, I want to offer something that's beneficial to people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we got into clean
Something
juice.
you believe in.
Yeah, something.
By
I
the way,
believe in.
it's delicious.
It is.
And full transparency. If my wife's here, she'll tell you, I absolutely hate beets. And this is, and I grab it on purpose, right? So like, if you see my reaction, it's horrible.
Yeah.
And I don't like beets, and this is really good. So
Yeah.
I think you have a great product here. Just for like the college guys, the pro guys that are listening to this, like how hard was it to get going into entrepreneur journey, right? Because
it was a beast, right? So I'm in the front office for 6 years with the Giants, 2 years prior to that in the NFL, in my ecosystem, in my world, and everything happened at the same time. So March COVID, May, not renewing the contract, June opening a single unit franchise in Morristown in the middle of a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's just in the trenches. The store does successful the first few months through the summer, and then you kind of settle into this pandemic life, and now no one wants to work, right? So the biggest challenges were the things that were, when you own a business, you basically just bought a job, right? You bought a job, and so for me, buying a franchise was I bought a job, and I think you have to see entrepreneurship as it is. You're creating a job for yourself that will ultimately buy you back your freedom if you're proficient for it. And for me, I wasn't planning on being full-time in it. So, but we had to just hold on to the beat. So I go from in the front office to being a $15 cold presser, I'm in the back, and thank God for Morristown. It was, in that first year, the store was able to take care of itself. Similarly, now it's challenging. It's really challenging because of supply chain issues, there's workforce issues. How can we get how can I get my family back? I got 7 beautiful kids. We went from homeschooling. Now my kids are completely in a private Christian school. So yeah, a lot of things just changed drastically in a way where it really deeply shook us to the core. But again, the anchor was strong in the faith, in the marriage, in the relationships, and we ride the beast. So the store is still there, 68 South Street, Morristown. We need as much support as we can get, workforce side, as well as still providing an amazing product and amazing experience. But we pivoted into some other things in the media, as well as our camp that we just launched this year.
Mm-hmm. And what I love about obviously owning a business, like I myself, I'm an athlete, I'm competitive, but obviously I've never played at a high level.
Sure.
But in business, it's where I feel like I can play at a high level.
No doubt.
Right? So like each year, I'm just like, what else am I going to conquer? Because each year you go like, hey, can I go from a minor league to the major league? Can I do a little bit better?
Sure.
Can I build success on top of success? And you're right. When you have your own business, you bought yourself a job.
Sure.
You have 2 options. You're either going to be your own worst boss.
Yep.
And which you're going to end up hating your business, or you learn how to do it in an efficient way, and you learn how to deal with problems because there will always be problems.
Yep.
And you learn to, I always have to go back to like reinforce the anchor because each year the problems are worse.
Yep.
Because you upgrade your problem.
There you go.
Payroll's bigger.
Yep.
Right. The impact of my decision is now affect 15 people.
Real
right?
tough.
Before, if it's just me, that's easy. I can ride that out.
No doubt.
If I make one decision affect 15 people, how can I sleep at night?
Yep.
Right. That's like this week. Like this time I get up at 4 a.m, just like, oh man, there's a problem that I don't know yet how to solve.
Sure.
And it just keep me up at night. I was like, I might as well just get up and figure it out.
There you go.
Right.
There you go. And like I said, and that's what I never imagined I would enjoy entrepreneurship as much. Like I said, after the first year, realizing that we were okay. It's like again, I'm a unique man with some unique challenges in relation to family size. My oldest is 21 years old. Actually, he just left for Air Force. And my youngest is 9 years old. We homeschooled for 15 years. I have a strong, man, I'm a lover of God. I'm a disciple maker. So I commit my life to people who are committed. I got a lot of things going on. So Clean Juice was the first of the marketplace appetite. And it was it's like, I love this thing. I'm like, man, it wet the palate, but now it opened up the expanse of what could be done. Mm-hmm. And so I do love this season where I'm at. Like I said, we launched the Catch Camp, which was football in the morning. We did leadership development, careers in sports in the afternoon. We just did the first one in Arizona the weekend before the Super Bowl. Amazing success out there. So we're looking forward to rolling this, of course, bringing this back to Jersey and scaling, just trying to figure out a way to holistically, again, we're talking about the athlete community. And really, we talk about people here at the end of the day. How are we developing healthy minds, healthy athletes, people who can see who can see this from beginning to end? And that's what my entire experience. The Catch Camp is actually telling my story of how sport has brought me to a place of peace and purpose primarily through my faith. But I think at the end of the day, every man is looking for work is the pillar of purpose, right? And peace has to come from within.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where when we're at peace is reaching a place of satisfaction and fulfillment that, everybody's trying to figure that out. And sports provides a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment for most people. But what happens when you can't do it anymore?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the story of the Catch Camp.
I love that because I wholeheartedly believe that to have a meaningful life, you need to have meaningful work.
No,
right?
100%.
And that's part of it. So one thing I want to ask you is, what skill set, what skills do you take on the field to bring it with you on your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a few, but for me, I do self-awareness is probably, so I'm big into the EQ space, right? Because high-level leaders have a great sense of understanding of themselves and people, right? Because at the end of the day, it's always going to be people. You could talk about process and profit, but people is at the core.
You need people to execute the process.
At the end of the day, so I pour all of my energy into people. And, and it has to be the right people. I think at the end of the day, I'm looking for people who are committed, who are willing to, I have a fair measure of discernment and understanding how to ask the questions to serve these people. Hey, man, what's important to you? Because if you tell me what's important to you, then I can hold you accountable to it. And it's not about me, but it's about me positioning you and laying a bridge where you can have access to the places that you said that you desired, and that serves not just you, but both of us. So whether it's an employee, whether it's an athlete that I've served and, work with, consult with, or again, whatever ecosystem that we've either created or participating in, that's really what it's about. So when I'm doing speaking, consulting, and things of that nature, it's really just about optimizing the opportunities for the people that I'm in service to.
Yeah, and I love that just because you and I, what we're doing right now is we're obviously living our best life as best we can, as we can envision it. And we do it by empowering other people to do the same thing. And sometimes what I have to remind myself is that, what's the best for me? What I think is best for the person in front of me might not be what they think is the best for them now.
Yep.
So I have to kind of slow my roll back.
There you go.
Right? And be like, hey, I here's what I know. I know way more than you, and I made a lot of mistakes.
Sure.
Here's how I would have done it. If they don't see it and they're not yet ready to hear that lesson, you can't force that upon them.
Sure.
And we do it out patient too. Like I always tell my team, it's like, hey, it's not what we want, right? Because what we want ultimately to get good result for them, in a way to pat ourselves in the back, is what they want.
There you go.
We have to be there to serve them, get them what they want,
Yep.
build rapport from there, and then they'll be like, okay, this person got me what I want. Maybe they kind of know what's going on.
Yep.
Why don't I follow them a little bit more?
Well said, man. The age-old principles never change, right? The eternal truths are embedded. There's laws in creation. There's laws in relation to what serves us well. We're foolish to ignore them. And I think that's the reason why humans go through the experience, because we think we know. Yeah. We would like to know. And then we discover what's really true through our experiences. So, and again, for me, it's about the frontier. Life presents a frontier where everybody needs to get engaged in this thing called life. It's not, and no one hits harder than life. But you can learn from others to minimize, some of the unnecessary or collateral damage, right? And so, especially men a little bit more than by nature than women, we want to prove ourselves, right? And I think that the wisest thing that we can do is kind of submit ourselves to people, right? And I think the nature of people is we gravitate toward people that we are like or we want to be like.
Mm-hmm.
And our ability to assess that as young men is the biggest challenge, because typically we get around a bunch of fools just like ourselves, and we all are done together because we're agreeable in our foolishness. Or we can be wise and say, man, something about this guy, right? And it's kind of like athletes, look at, Randy Moss, look at a Chris Carter. If he cleaves to these guys who've had the previous experience, then he can minimize some of the unnecessary collateral damage that can come by poor decisions or by arrogance.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what life in everybody's particular ecosystem, it affords us. Mm-hmm. If so some people like to say mentors, like whatever it is, you got to find somebody that's where you want to be and get there. Mm-hmm. And get there so that you can ultimately attain those things. But you can't, we're in an age where everybody has an opportunity to do everything too. So I think you have to hedge the two of, hey man, you could do something, but commit some service too. Earn some faithfulness. Mm-hmm. Like, call it the sage, the sage stage, or, go give yourself to learn something and to perfect something just as much as you have the opportunity to create your own brand and experience too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that, man. So last question.
Sure.
If you were to go back, right, know what you know now, to talk to your younger self right before you're about to leave the league, talk to some of the college kids that think about hanging up the cleats, talk about to some of the pro guys that are about to think about hanging up the cleats, what advice would you give them?
I would assure them that every opportunity that they desire or have desired, in their place of purpose and meaning is still available. That's the first thing I would do, is that greatness is in front of you, because greatness is determined by either impact or reach. So, I'm big on, hey man, get great done. That's one of my sayings. Let's get great done today, because everybody has the opportunity to attain a measure of greatness. And so I'm going to fill them first. And then I just, then I'm going to, hey, don't put too much pressure on yourself to be everything that you imagine today. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where, when we're talking about the anxiety and the depression age and the mental health conversations, is that everybody's in the comparison game. Everybody's looking out into the world of social media and the internet and YouTube, and everybody's painting the perception, right? Fake it till you make it is a real thing, mm-hmm. right? So some people out there faking it till they make it. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you right now, I'm far from financially where, the success measures that my resume has had, and not because of foolishness, just because I'm just being responsible, living a normal life in New Jersey, and it's expensive. Mm-hmm. 7 kids is expensive. So I've never hit the jackpot. And guess what? That's all right. But I've never had gross failures. I've just tried to be a good steward over what I had. So maybe if you see me on my resume, you think that I'm out here killing the game and I got a few M's in the bank. Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? Everybody's sharing what they want to share. And I'm not faking anything, but I don't have the time to tell everybody my story. And so I think at the end of the day is, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Create the roadmap and find somebody that's where you want to be so that you can get to where you want to go.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, man. David, thank you so much for your time, man. There's a lot of wisdom. I know parents, athletes, my college guys, my pro guys, all the gals will listen to this and just be like, man, like you can walk away with a lot of life lessons, a lot of sport lessons. So I appreciate everything that you said today. I appreciate your time. And again, thank you for this awesome juice. You give me faith in good bees.
Yeah, no doubt. Sprinkle a little pineapple in there. It'll shift it for you. Take a little bit of the earthy flavor out of it. But
so where's the place in Morristown so people can stop by?
Place in Morristown is 68 South Street, right on the strip next to the Performing Arts Center, across from the Performing Arts Center. Right off the green. It's a beautiful store, beautiful location. My wife, David Tyree, runs it completely. She's dynamic. But yeah, man, y'all can find anything. Find a store there. Catch the Moment podcast on every platform. Look for Catch Camp. I do speaking, consulting. So I'm just grinding. It's a new season. Hopefully I'll get a book out within this next year. And just keep storytelling, man. There's a lot to offer within the ecosystem. So yeah, find me on the website, davidtyree85.com.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, bro.